Hi, I am a sleep scientist. Tonight we'll drift softly into a different kind of knowledge, one that predates books and telescopes and formulas. A world where the stars still whispered their names, where every flame flickered with intention, and the line between myth and measurement was blurry, maybe, but beautifully so. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening and what time it is for you. Let me know in the comments below. I'm always curious where these quiet little science stories are drifting, and if this video will help you when you're there. Close your eyes now. Let your breath ease out slowly, like warm wind brushing through dry grass. You're no longer in your room. You're somewhere older. You're lying on a woven mat in a low-roofed house made of clay and straw. Outside, the desert is vast and dark quiet, except for the occasional howl of wind dancing between rocks. The roof is open above your head. Through it, the sky watches you. Or maybe you're watching it. It's hard to say. An elder sits by the door, hunched but not tired. Their eyes reflect firelight and something else, memory maybe. They're murmuring a story you already half know, though you can't remember where you heard it. About a hunter who followed a bear into the sky. About the 7 stars that shimmer and shift like a family that won't stop moving. The elder points. There they say. You look up. It takes a moment, but then yes, you see it too. A pattern, a shape, an animal drawn not with lines but with longing. That's the first science the minds need to see meaning in the stars. You feel the ground beneath you, the packed earth still warm from the day. That warmth is older than memory. It has been there since the first feet pressed it down, since someone built a fire not just for heat, but for watching shadows. The shadows. They flicker on the walls as someone moves past the fire. They stretch and shrink with each step like soft puppets on stone. And suddenly you realize this too is a kind of measurement. Time told by the length of a shadow, a sundial in motion. The ancients didn't call it that, of course. They didn't need to. They just watched. They noticed. They remembered. When the shadow touches the doorway, one might say that's when the goats return. That was enough. And here you are now, resting with them and watching the stars slowly shift overhead. You're not learning a new fact. You're remembering something older than memory. A child curls up beside you. What happens if the stars fall, they ask. The elder smiles. They don't fall. They move, but very slowly, like the thoughts of a god. Maybe that's not scientific by today's standards, but it feels right. It explains something more important than velocity or trajectory. It explains your place in the stillness. You close your eyes for a moment. Behind your eyelids, the stars still pulse. They've become part of your breath. Inhale, Orion rises. Exhale, the scorpion fades. Somewhere in the distance, a jackal calls. The sound isn't threatening. It's familiar, as if even the animals have always known their place in the pattern of things. The elder continues to speak, but now in a softer voice, as if slipping between worlds. They talk of the moon and its moods, of how it grows fat and thin like a pregnant woman or a hungry child. They used it to track time, to predict floods, to mark the days of planting and mourning. You begin to understand science wasn't always separate from life. It was stitched into stories, into daily rituals, into the way someone tied their sandals or marked their doorway. Even now, your body remembers rhythms that your mind has long forgotten. The natural rise and fall of your breathing, the drumbeat of your heart, the tug of gravity when you turn onto your side. All of these things were known to the ancients, even if not in words. The stars overhead blur gently now, like someone wiping oil across the sky. You're drifting. But before sleep comes fully, one more image lingers. A woman walking into the desert at dawn carrying a bowl of water on her head. She balances it perfectly, not with calculation, but with instinct. She doesn't need to measure angles or forces. Her body is the math. You see, that's what they understood, how to live in tune with the world without conquering it. They measured by feel. They tested with time. They remembered with stories. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't behind us at all. Maybe we've just taken a different route, one paved with graphs and wires while theirs was traced in sand and ash. You let that thought settle into your breath like dust into a quiet corner. Tonight you're safe, you're ancient, and you're very, very tired. The fire's gone down now, just glowing coals breathing quietly in the dark. You turn your head and notice the way the light flickers on the wall, not chaotic but rhythmic like a kind of language. It pulses, shifts, lengthens, disappears. You realize someone long ago must have noticed that too. Someone sitting just like you are now, watching the shadows move, watching how their own hand could block the light and cast a long finger onto the opposite wall. And if they moved closer to the flame, the finger grew larger. If they pulled away, it shrank. And there it is, the beginning of measurement, before rulers, before mathematics. There was this simple fact: shadows change. And they tell you something if you're patient enough to watch. You sit up slowly, the mat rough beneath your fingertips. The elder is gone now, and you're somewhere else, but not abruptly. It feels like the dream just gently moved on, like turning a page made of smoke. Now you're inside a darkened cave. A flickering fire glows behind you, and in front of you is a wall. Not just any wall, but a smooth, soot-darkened surface dotted with strange marks, circles, handprints, scratched lines, dots arranged like constellations. And there's something curious happening. A figure, perhaps a teacher, or a parent, or simply a watcher, holds up a stick. Its tip glows from the fire. They wave it slowly in front of the wall, casting a moving shadow of their hand. Then they stop. Wait. Measure with their eyes. Again. Again. You realize they're marking time. Each wave of the stick takes the same rhythm. Maybe they're telling a story, or maybe they're counting heartbeats. This is what came before clocks. You notice how your own breath now rises and falls in that same rhythm. Like the ancient metronome was built into your lungs all along. Outside the cave, day breaks faintly, but deep within it's still warm and flickering. You follow a narrow passage that opens into a wider space where more people are gathered. Their faces lit by a central flame, each one watching how the light moves across a polished stone on the floor. You sit beside a child who leans toward you and whispers, "When the shadow touches the spiral, it's time to grind the grain." Their voice is filled with the certainty of repetition. Not because someone told them, but because they've seen it happen. Day after day, season after season. The sun, the stick, the shadow, always the same rhythm. There's no quartz crystal ticking, no battery, just the sun, the stone, and the story. And in some way that's even more precise, because it's connected to the world, not cut off from it. You feel that thought settle into your skin. How we often think of ancient science as guesswork, superstition, trial and error. But what if it was really patient attention, repetition across generations? Trust in the body's own patterns. Knowledge you didn't read, you lived. There's a bowl of water near the fire. A girl leans over it and blows gently across the surface. Ripples dance out soft rings across the reflection. "Watch," she says. You do. The ripples hit the side of the bowl, then bounce back, collide, interfere, echo. Like voices, she murmurs. Everything returns. You don't even realize you're smiling. That's wave physics, right there in a clay bowl, not in an equation, in a breath. And you feel it again, that gentle, amused voice inside your head, the one that whispers things like, maybe. Ancient science was just as smart. It just wasn't wearing lab coats. Someone claps their hands to shake the dust from their robe. The sound echoes differently against the stone deep hollow, delayed. You close your eyes and listen to how sound bends. It's not the same in every corner of the cave. You notice how a whisper in one part travels farther than a shout in another. Even now your brain is mapping this, not because you're being tested, but because that's what humans do. We notice. We remember. We wonder. You open your eyes again, and the fires burn down into red embers. The cave is darker, quieter now. The teacher is gone. The children are asleep. But the marks on the wall remain, and somehow they seem to glow slightly even without flame. Maybe that's your imagination. Or maybe the wall remembers too. As you settle back onto the stone floor, your hand folded beneath your head, the quiet returns. It's not an empty quiet. It's full of meaning, like the space between two drum beats, like a pause in breath. You remember how the shadows danced, how the stick moved, how the girl's ripples bounced back, how sound curled into corners. Simple things. Small things. But that's how science was born, not with thunder, but with firelight shadows and the need to know when. When does the shadow hit the mark? When does the ripple return? When is it time to rise, plant, run, rest, and now it is time to sleep? The world has shifted again, like a dream folding in on itself. You're no longer in the cave. You're in a sun-baked courtyard somewhere between myth and memory, and the air tastes of sand and old metal. A breeze stirs your hair, gentle, dry, whispering across the stone walls like it has something to say. You sit quietly, letting it move over your skin. Then you hear it, an old voice, slow and worn, murmuring words you don't fully understand. Not because they're in a different language, but because they're older than language. The air is breath, the voice says, and breath is life. So when the wind moves, that is the earth breathing. You turn to look. A figure in a linen robe sits nearby, kneading something in their lap, maybe a clay charm or an herb bundle. Their eyes never leave the horizon where a dust cloud curls upward like incense. The gods live in the sky, they add, because that's where the breath goes when it leaves the body. You're not sure whether to smile, but it makes sense, in its own way. Long before air was a mixture of gases or wind was a pressure system, people knew it was powerful. It moved ships. It spread fire. It carried voices. It could warm or kill. It came in and out of your chest, and when it stopped, you were gone. You take a slow breath now just to feel it more clearly. Inhale. The warm air fills your lungs like sunlight pouring into a closed room. Exhale. It leaves you gently without struggle. That is something every ancient culture noticed. You don't need an MRI or a lab report to know breath matters. You just need a quiet moment and the willingness to pay attention. A child runs past you laughing, chasing a red feather caught in the wind. It dances erratically, never landing where expected. The child leaps and misses again. Wind plays games, the old figure murmurs. Like gods do, you nod. Because that too is a kind of science. Not prediction, but observation. The feather arcs left not because of magic, but because of some invisible swirl, some eddy you cannot see but can guess at. In that moment, you understand the roots of meteorology. They didn't have satellites or models, but they watched the way smoke leaned before a storm, how animals hid before windstorms, how a still day could break into gusts just before sunset. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaks open and a gust of wind slams it shut again. The sound is sharp like a punctuation mark. You follow it barefoot over warm stone. The breeze is steadier now, more directional. Someone is hanging strips of linen on a wooden frame. They flap and twist as the wind shifts, and one strip slaps your cheek as you pass. It smells like rosemary and earth. Drying, the person says without looking, but also listening. You tilt your head. They point to a smaller strip pinned beside the others. It's cut differently, narrow, smooth, with holes punched along the sides. The wind makes sound, they explain. When the holes sing, it means the wind is coming from the east. When they stay silent, it's from the south. You lean in closer. The wind rises slightly, and a faint whistling begins, not a melody exactly, but a tone, a signal, a song. Not all music is made by humans, the person adds with a shrug. And again, you're struck by something soft, but certain. Long before the invention of instruments, people listened, and what they heard became meaning. You step back into the courtyard. The air is thicker now, warming with midday. Heat ripples above the stones like invisible water. Your shadow hugs your feet closely now, short and dense. You remember what the elder said last night about shadows. Everything returns. And then you hear the sound of a flute. Not a modern one, but a simple reed pipe. A boy sits beneath an olive tree, playing it slowly, his breath steady. You watch the branch above him quiver slightly with the air's movement. You sit across from him silently and close your eyes. The melody isn't precise. It wavers like the wind itself, but it feels accurate. Somehow, this too is a form of measurement. Emotion carried on the current of breath. After a while, the music fades. The courtyard is still. A lizard darts across a stone and disappears into a crack. You think again about that first statement. The earth breathes. It sounds poetic, sure. But now you see more clearly, air is not emptiness. It moves, it presses, it carries. When you walk into wind, you push against a real force. That's pressure. When you breathe, you create a vacuum, and the world rushes in to fill it. That's science, just older, softer, wrapped in stories and whispers. You lie back on the warm stone's arms, outstretched, like someone floating. And the breeze brushes your fingertips, as if to say, yes, you understand now. Not with equations, but with your body. And tonight, as you sleep, you'll breathe just as they did. One breath after another, invisible, but everything. You wake into the warmth of wet soil, not the kind of waking where your eyes snap open, but the kind where your skin notices first the cool of mist, the softness under your back, the faint scent of clay and river grass. You're lying on the bank of a slow, wide river, not a modern one carved by concrete and schedules, but an ancient river wide as thought, lazy as time. A voice murmurs beside you, careful where you step. The land remembers. You sit up slowly, and beside you is a man drawing lines in the damp mud with a stick. Not lines exactly, angles, shapes. He's pressing a string into the earth, stretching it taut from one peg to another. That's a triangle, you say without thinking. He looks up amused. It's also how I know where to build. You watch him move the string again, measuring equal lengths, marking a right angle. Flood season comes next moon, he says. If I place the corner here, The water will never reach the grain storage. It's ancient geometry, not in a classroom, in the soil. Not because anyone's teaching it, but because the river teaches it again and again. Every flood smooths the land, erases boundaries, and every planting season the people come back and redraw them. Not at random, but with precision, with stakes, ropes, memory. He dips his stick in a bowl of ash and traces a curve that wraps gently around a stone. This will catch the sun best, he says. Morning light for drying, evening shade for resting. You run your fingers through the mud. It's cool and dense, textured with small pebbles and bits of straw. A language. Not one you speak, but one your hands understand. You begin to see it now, the land as notebook, the water as pen, the sun as clock. Behind you a child sings something rhythmic while scattering seeds. Each throw is spaced with a practiced flick of the wrist. A step, a flick. A step, a flick. She doesn't count. She feels. And it works. Every 3 paces the man beside you says, or they choke each other out. You raise an eyebrow. Not the children, he adds dryly. The plants. You smile. The first joke of the morning. A breeze carries in the scent of wet grain, and something sweeter, honey maybe, or the waxy smoke of burning reeds. A woman passes balancing a shallow basket on her head. Inside are rounded stones of equal size, each with a symbol carved on one side. She places one stone on a square grid etched into a flat piece of wood. Then another. Then another. You lean in. What's she doing? The man glances over, counting debt and luck. Maybe both. Turns out she's calculating, or maybe casting lots, or both. The symbols are unfamiliar, but the pattern is not. Base 10, base 12, base 60. You wouldn't know just by looking. But then again, you don't have to name the system to understand its purpose. She completes her arrangement and exhales deeply. Her hands rest gently on the stones, not as if she owns them, but as if they've told her something. You get the sense that these aren't just tools. They're messengers. Markers of a world that wasn't just observed, it was participated in. Your eyes wander back to the field. A group of children are marking lines with sticks, creating large rectangles. Game, you ask. No, the man says. Training. For what? Flood recovery. Land survey. One day they'll need to redraw the village lines again. A small boy is trying to remember the triangle's magic. He stretches, a rope folds it, adjusts his angle. He mutters numbers under his breath, not to memorize them, but to make them work. 3, 4, 5, he says. 3, 4, 5. Pythagoras, no, this is older. And you realize the theorem didn't create the triangle. The triangle created the theorem. You lean back, eyes on the slow clouds above. The sun rises slowly through a haze diffused like lemon light through thin cloth. Your hand touches the warm, packed soil beneath you, and you feel how every ridge, every crack, every pebble holds memory. Not just of water and sun, but of thought. Someone pressed their idea here, and the earth remembered. You glance again at the field, the markers, the rope, and you understand something quietly stunning. They didn't invent science. They felt it, drew it, walked it. They weren't proving theories. They were protecting grain, and the math wasn't in notebooks. It was in footsteps, in floodlines, in bricks laid by hand. You close your eyes and let that settle like sediment in a river bend. All this time you'd thought science meant labs and formulas and white coats, but it also means fingers in mud. Means ropes stretched straight, means learning where the water will rise because your neighbor's roof already vanished once. A distant drum sounds a hollow, deep thump. You can't tell if it's a call to meal or a warning about the river, but either way, it's measured, like everything else. You lie back again. The sun has shifted slightly, and your shadow reaches just past your toes. The river is quiet, and you are still. A hum lingers in the air as you drift toward your next memory. It's not a song, not really, but something melodic in the way people move. You find yourself inside a small room filled with the scent of beeswax stone and something herbal, maybe thyme or crushed myrrh. The walls are painted with gentle strokes of ochre and blue images of eyes and birds, spirals and gods. An Egyptian woman is grinding something in a shallow bowl. She doesn't look up at you at first. Her hands move with precision. She adds honey to a powder, stirs it with a carved bone spoon, and tilts her head thoughtfully before adding a few drops of thick green oil. "Let it rest," she murmurs, not to you, but to the bowl. "Everything needs time." Then she looks at you, smiles gently, and gestures for you to sit. "Do your eyes hurt?" she asks. You blink. She laughs softly. They always do after sandstorms. She lifts a small reed applicator and dips it into the mixture. It's dark, almost black, thick and shiny. She paints a thin line beneath your eyes. There. Keeps out the sun. And the evil. You smile. "Is it makeup or medicine?" She shrugs. "Why not both?" And there it is, the heart of ancient healing, not a separation of magic and science, but a layering. An understanding that body and spirit are always in conversation. A young boy enters holding his arm. A small cut bleeds from his elbow. The woman gestures for him to sit, wipes the cut with wine, then presses a mash of garlic and resin over it. "This will sting," she warns gently, "but it will also work." The boy doesn't flinch, just stares ahead as she binds the wound with linen. You ask her how she knows what to use. She smiles again. "I listen." "To the body, to the plants," she replies. "To the gods, and sometimes to the rats." You raise an eyebrow. "They find the good herbs before we do, especially the ones that help fevers." And just like that, you realize this isn't guesswork. This is science shaped by story, by instinct, by failure and remembering. A shelf nearby holds small jars labeled with symbols. No words, just pictures: a foot, a sun, a snake, a fish. You reach for one, but stop. It feels too personal, like touching someone's diary. The woman continues working. She wraps herbs in cloth and places them on a warm stone to dry. She crushes seeds with a rhythm that feels familiar. 2 taps, pause, 1 tap, pause, almost like a heartbeat. You close your eyes and imagine her ancestors doing the same under different skies with different names. And suddenly, you're not in one room. You're in many. In the clay huts of Sumer, where people scraped mold from bread and noticed wounds healed faster afterward. In the high plains of Peru, where coca leaves were chewed long before painkillers had barcodes. None of this was modern, but it was real. You open your eyes again. The woman is now lighting a small incense cone near the doorway. Smoke rises slow and spiraled. She waves it once toward you. "Protection," she says, "and for the scent." Makes the air feel smarter. You chuckle, then breathe it in. It does smell good. Earthy, like patience. A girl walks in holding a small scroll. She opens it and points to a diagram, an eye, a curved tool, and a line that runs from the temple to the heel. She says something softly. The woman nods. She's memorizing where the pressure lines are, she tells you. Each point can affect the breath, the belly, the bleeding. Acupuncture, reflexology. You're not sure, but you recognize the intent to understand the body as a system. To treat not just the wound, but the way the wind moves inside you. The girl traces the line on your foot, with her finger hesitant, but careful. You feel nothing painful, just attention. Human attention so focused it becomes healing. The sun outside has moved again. Its light now slants into the room, bouncing off the polished jar lids, making soft spots of gold on the walls. You realize there are no clocks here, but everyone knows when it's time to stop. Not because a bell rings, but because the shadows have shifted. The woman packs the remaining mixture into a small pot and ties it shut with twine. "For you," she says. "What is it?" She shrugs. "Medicine or magic, or maybe both." You smile again. You've heard that before. And you understand now it's not about what they called it. It's about what it did. She opens the door to let in the evening air. It's cooler now, carrying the sounds of pots, clinking animals settling, and laughter echoing from a distant courtyard. You step outside slowly, the pot warm in your hand. The world smells of healing and home. You're not cured, but you feel better. Maybe that's the point. You take one last look at the little room, its walls soft with smoke, its shelves lined with dried plants and folded linen, its silence filled with remembered instructions. Then you walk into the dusk carrying knowledge that doesn't need a certificate. It knows its worth. The stars have returned, but now you're lying on a hard rooftop, smooth stone warm from the day. There's a soft rustle beside you, like papyrus unrolling in the dark. You don't need to ask where you are. The answer is above you. The sky is impossibly vast, and yet it feels measured. A man sits nearby, cross-legged, steady hands, holding a small wooden tool shaped like an L. He aligns it with two bright stars near the horizon. You don't know their names. He does. He speaks without looking down. That one is called the Watcher. When it rises, it's time for counting sheep. When it sets, it's time to wake the priests. You nod slowly. This is your classroom now, and the ceiling stretches to infinity. He adjusts the tool, then picks up a small bowl filled with black sand. Using a stylus, he scratches an arc. Not a perfect circle. A kind of loop oblong stretched like an eye half closed in thought. "They don't move the way we thought," he mutters. "Sometimes they wander. That's why we watch. This is astronomy before astronomy had a name. This is timekeeping written in light." The man sets the tool down and looks at you. "Do you know how long it takes for the moon to disappear?" You shake your head. "Neither do we," he admits, chuckling softly. "Not exactly. But if you stack enough months, the answer begins to hum." He points to a notched stick. Each mark tallies a cycle. Each notch is not just a record, it's a prediction, a confidence that the world repeats itself, even if not perfectly. You watch as he places a pebble on a wide, flat stone, one for each night's observation. The pile is small, but it grows, and somehow that feels powerful. You look again at the sky, and something clicks. Those stars, they're not just for wishing. They're a calendar, a map, a warning, a promise. Everything you need to know is up there if you have the patience to keep watching. He pulls out a long scroll, not of paper, but of thin leather, soft and cracked. It's etched with shapes, arcs, straight lines, dots in ordered pairs. You think of it as a chart, but it's more than that. It's a story, a memory. One line curves upward with a tail. "That's the one that burned," he says. "The fire star. Came once, then was gone." "A comet," you whisper. He shrugs. a message. We still argue about what it meant. You can hear his voice winding down like the night itself, sleepy, reflective. We named them to remember, he says, and then we watched to understand. You stare at one particular star blinking gently. It twinkles, but not in the playful way you expect. It wavers, tells you it's cold, distant, maybe even lonely. You wonder if anyone ever reached up and tried to pluck one down. The man beside you shifts. We never thought they were gods. Not really. But they were older than us, so we listened. His words hang there, suspended between science and prayer. You glance at the small wooden L again. It's so simple. A few carved angles, no metal, no lenses. Yet it opened the sky. Measured seasons. Predicted floods. Guided travelers across empires. You lie flat again, arms folded behind your head. You can almost feel the earth's slow turning beneath you. Not fast, not violent, just a subtle rotation. Like drifting on an invisible wheel. It's peaceful. A soft wind picks up, carrying the smell of ash and bread. Somewhere below, someone is baking for tomorrow. You hear footsteps climbing. A young girl appears holding a small bowl of water. She sets it down near the edge of the rooftop and waits. Then, when a certain star aligns with the bowl's reflection, she nods and whispers, "Almost dawn." It's not superstition. It's experience turned into practice. A bowl of still water as a telescope. The sky mirrored in the most ordinary things. You watch as she marks something onto a clay tablet. One symbol. One moment. This will help us count the solstice, she says to no one in particular. You ask her if she knows what solstice means. She shrugs. When the sun gets tired. You smile. Not accurate. But not wrong either. You close your eyes. The rooftop is warm beneath you. The wind rises slightly, and somewhere in the distance the first bird calls out into the darkness. Not quite morning. Not yet. The stars are fading now. The sky is brushing them away with pale gray fingers. But you remember their names, their paths, their small stubborn glows. Science didn't begin with machines. It began with watching. Waiting, marking, trusting. It began with a rooftop, a wooden tool, and a child holding a bowl of water to the sky. And as you drift off again, the last star fades, but not before winking at you, like it knows you understand. You awaken not with a start, but with an echo. A sound, soft, rhythmic, repeating, like a voice bouncing between stone walls. You're in a canyon now. Narrow, tall, carved over centuries by wind and water. The air is still cool here, even though the sun is rising somewhere above the rocks. Light filters down in ribbons, and the stone walls seem to glow from within. You hear it again, a single word spoken loudly, and then the reply. Not from a person, but from the canyon itself. Ho, ho, oh. You sit still, listening. It's not eerie. It's cooperative, like the stone is agreeing with you. Beside you stands a man holding a conch shell to his lips. He blows into it. The sound expands in waves, bouncing and returning in layers. A deep, low note wrapped in whispers. Then silence. Then there it is again, but softer, delayed. That's how we measure the space, he says. By how long it takes the sound to come home. You blink, it's early acoustics. He claps once, sharply. The echo answers once, twice, 3 times. He smiles. That third one's always late. That means the bend is sharper now. He steps away, gesturing for you to follow deeper into the canyon. You walk slowly, feet crunching on dry pebbles. The walls close in, then widen again. And with each change in shape, the sound changes too. You pause at a place where the wind whistles softly. Not a howl, but a gentle flute tone sustained. It rises and falls as you move your hand through it. You're interrupting the wind's instrument, he says. And again, you realize sound is not just heard, it is shaped by the air, by the land, by intention. At a small alcove, you find a circle of flat stones arranged in a spiral. People are gathered here, seated in silence. Each holds a simple instrument, drums, flutes, rattles made from seed pods. No one speaks. Then from somewhere in the spiral, a single note is played, and the rest join one by one, matching it, not by volume, not by melody, but by vibration. The canyon joins them. It becomes part of the music. You feel it in your ribs before you recognize it in your ears' resonance. You remember how in school someone showed you how a glass could break if the pitch was just right. But here nothing breaks. It all holds together. Because the harmony is gentle, persistent, ancient. One of the drummers stops and points at a crack in the stone wall. That one formed during a quake, he says. The echo's shorter here now, but the rhythm still fits. The others nod, as if the earth's injuries are part of the song too. You walk on again, following a narrow trail up the slope. The stone path is worn smooth, as if thousands of bare feet have shaped it over time. You reach a small plateau. From here, the canyon spreads wide like a bell's open mouth. The man lifts a thin reed flute to his lips and plays a phrase short, uncertain, like a question. A moment later, the canyon answers not with a clear echo, but with a shimmer, like the sound has stretched into mist and returned as memory. He turns to you. You can learn the shape of a space by listening to how it returns what you give it. You nod slowly. Because that's not just acoustics. That's everything. You remember rooms you've walked into and how they felt different. The way laughter sits higher in kitchens. The way sadness seems to hum longer in stairwells. You think of music not as entertainment, but as geometry made audible, vibrations shaped by material location intention. You turn in a slow circle, listening to the wind stroke each wall like a harp string. Not every place has sound, but every place can be listened to. You close your eyes and press your ear to the warm stone. A deep silence hums there. Not absence, but readiness. Like it's waiting for the next note. You hum a soft tone, just a vowel. It returns to you. Softer, then fades. And for a moment, you feel completely connected, not just to this canyon, but to the mouths of caves, the domes of temples, the hollows of trees. Places where sound becomes story, where vibration becomes memory. You sit down again. Let your breath match the silence. In, out. Even the canyon seems to breathe with you. The sun creeps higher and light paints soft golden lines across the rock. You rest your back against the canyon wall. It's warm now, solid, ancient. You think of the first people who came here long before the word physics existed and realize that sound could teach them space, could guide them home, could warn them of dangers, could bring them peace. They didn't need equations to know that a sound's return time held meaning. They just needed an open ear, a question, a voice, a canyon. You close your eyes. The last sound you hear is a low note, gentle, rounded, almost like a lullaby folding itself into the stone. It doesn't echo back. It simply stays. When your eyes open again, there is no canyon, no echo, just the sound of waves, steady and slow, brushing against something wooden beneath you. You're floating now. Not aimlessly, this boat has purpose. But there's no rudder, no compass, no star chart in sight. And yet the man at the bow looks entirely confident. His skin is the color of sun-baked bark, his eyes calm, scanning the horizon, not with tension, but with recognition. "We'll arrive before morning," he says, though there's no land in sight. You sit up on the deck. Around you, the ocean swells gently, dark and endless. The sky is clear, studded with stars, and the boat creaks in rhythm with the waves. "How do you know where we're going?" you ask softly. He doesn't answer right away. Instead, he holds out his hand and points not at a single star, but at a cluster. He follows their curve with his finger, then traces the swell of a nearby wave. "They match," he says simply. "Tonight, they match." You frown a little, trying to understand. He smiles. "Look again." The stars move slowly across the sky. The swells move beneath us in rhythm. The trick is to feel their agreement. And suddenly, it clicks. This is navigation without maps. Direction drawn from sensation. The Polynesians called it wayfinding, not plotting, not guessing, but remembering, feeling. You close your eyes and notice it too, the way the boat tilts gently at the same angle each time a swell lifts it. You start to count, and after 7 breaths, the boat rises again. 7 breaths. A pattern. You open your eyes. The man has moved to the stern now, running his fingers lightly through the water. "The sea tells you more than the sky," he says, "but only if you treat her gently." He motions to a bundle beside you, long sticks tied together in arcs and angles. At first they seem like decoration, but as he lifts them, you see it's a frame, a map of sorts, one that bends and curves like a spider's web. "This," he says, "tells me where the swells cross." You realize it's a wave compass. The sticks mark where one current meets another based not on direction, but on sensation, how the boat rocks, how the wind shifts, how the water feels at your fingertips. And suddenly, navigation becomes a dance, not a diagram. It's not about control. It's about trust. You watch him dip a smooth stone into the water, then hold it up to the moonlight. "This one," he says, "was warmed by the northern tide. If the cold comes from the south, I know which current we're in." He presses the stone into your hand. It's faintly warm. You close your fingers around it and feel the memory it holds. Not exact temperature, not data, just story, a tactile truth. Above you, the stars continue their quiet arc. The man lifts his eyes again, watching how they shift relative to one another. When that one touches the horizon, he whispers, "We turn." You don't ask how he knows. You simply believe him. And now you understand something else. Direction in this world is not told. It is inherited, practiced, memorized by muscle and breath and story. He hums a soft melody not to himself but to the sea, a pulse of tone with each wave. You begin to hum along unconsciously, matching his pitch. The wind responds with a soft whistle in the sail. The boat creaks differently now, not in warning but in acknowledgement. The stars shift again. You notice how they always rise at the same spot, season after season, and how the angle they rise at tells you more than just time. They show where you are, he says, reading your thoughts, but only if you remember where you started. You smile. There's something deeply human about that. He crouches beside you now and traces a line on the deck with salt water from his hand. "This is us," he says, marking a dot. "This is the island." He doesn't need latitude. He draws direction like someone tracing memory. "This," he says quietly, "is how we've crossed the Pacific for 1,000 years. And you realize even without paper, without math, without any written language at all, these journeys were made and made again. Not by chance, by mastery, by looking up, by feeling down, by listening in every direction. The ocean seems larger now, but also kinder, because you understand it just a little more. You lie back against the wooden deck, letting the boat cradle you. The stars shift again above you, but now you know their names, even if you don't know their letters. You know their habits, their rhythm. The man returns to the bow. The sails tighten with a new gust. The boat leans ever so slightly left, and you don't need to ask. You know you've turned. You'll reach the island by dawn. You wake in the hush that comes before sunrise. The sky is still a deep violet, but it's softening at the edges. You're no longer at sea. You're kneeling on damp soil in a place that feels both wild and cultivated, like nature and human care have struck a quiet agreement. Around you, the world is alive but slow. Dew sparkles on leaves. A frog croaks lazily. Somewhere in the distance, a bird stirs but does not yet sing. A man stands beside you, his hands calloused, his tunic stained with earth. He nods toward a plot of land arranged in precise rows, not industrially perfect, but clearly intentional. Some plants are blooming. Others are just beginning to stretch toward the sky. This is the edge of the dry season, he says. We let this field sleep. You look at the plot again. It doesn't seem asleep. It seems full of waiting. He kneels and touches a sprig of green with the back of his fingers. We watch the ants, he says. When they move uphill in a hurry, the rains are close. You pause. Ants. But then you remember observation isn't just about stars and wind. It's about everything, even the smallest life. A child nearby is counting bees, not collecting them, just counting their visits to each flower. Her mother calls out gently. 7 on the squash, 5 on the cotton. You watch as she tallies them with small seeds dropping 1 per bee into a carved bowl, a soft system, a living abacus. Later, those counts will determine which crops get more water today. And again, you realize ecology didn't begin as theory. It began as memory, repetition, attention. The man leads you to a shaded grove. These, he says, pointing to small trees with curling leaves, warn us when the ground is thirsty. They close first, before anything else does. He runs his hand through the soil, nods, and moves on. Son, no sensors, no spreadsheets, just feel, just respect. As you walk together, he gestures at a patch of land where corn once grew. It has been left fallow, but in its place a strange pattern of plants grows: small, flowering herbs, bright green legumes. They fix the soil, he explains. Pull the poison out. Feed the rest. He doesn't say nitrogen, but you understand. You bend to touch the leaves. They're smooth, waxy. Not beautiful, but clearly appreciated. This is a good year, he says. The fireflies came early. You chuckle quietly. What do fireflies have to do with crops? Everything. He replies. They follow the frogs. Frogs follow the rain. And rain, well, rain is the beginning of everything. You sit on a rock nearby and take it in. The layers, the rhythms, the mutual listening between human and land, between observation and action. From somewhere behind you, a Maya calendar stone leans against the base of a large ceiba tree. Its surface is worn, but still legible, marked with symbols that speak of days, moons, balance. You run your fingers over it. Not just a clock, a worldview, a way to live inside time, not just measure it. A young boy walks past carrying a basket of flowers. "These open at the 4th hour," he says proudly. "The birds told me." You glance up. Sure enough, the sky is changing color, and a chorus of chirps begins to rise like soft percussion. You watch him set the flowers near a clay statue, shaped like a turtle. He closes his eyes and hums a note, then adds, "Grandmother says the plants wake when the sun looks them in the eye." Poetic, but also accurate. You sit quietly and let the warmth reach your skin. The light is not harsh. It's a slow bloom, a reminder that all things begin gently. The man returns, holding a bowl of ground maize. He offers it to you warm and nutty. "We mix it with honey when it's time to say thanks," he says, "to the bees and the rain." You eat slowly, savoring the taste. It's simple, but it feels earned. As the sun rises higher, more people emerge, walking barefoot, checking leaves, whispering to goats, clapping their hands softly to scatter dew from vines. It's not chaos. It's a shared rhythm. You realize this isn't just farming. It's a form of daily science, a choreography of life with the land. And every gesture matters. A young girl joins you with a small clay tablet. She draws 4 circles and places seeds inside them. "One for each moon," she says. "Each time we learn again." You close your eyes for a moment and breathe in deeply. The air smells of pollen, soil, and smoke. But beneath that, something else: trust. Trust that the world, if observed patiently, will always teach you what to do next. The girl leans against your arm. "Do you think the earth listens back?" You open your eyes. "Yes," you whisper. "And maybe it does." You're standing now beside a low, glowing fire. Not in a home, but in the open, surrounded by stone ruins, half walls, scattered tools left to rest where their last owners placed them, perhaps 1,000 years ago. The air is thick with the scent of charcoal mineral dust and something faintly metallic. The kind of place where even silence seems to carry memory. A woman crouches near the fire pit, turning a long stick slowly in the coals. Not to cook, not for warmth. She's watching something burn, a specific kind of wood, dry and pale, that pops in little bursts. She picks up a second log, darker and denser, and lays it on top. It smolders quietly, releasing a soft plume of white smoke. "Each wood speaks differently," she says without looking up. "Some are fast and hot. Others are slow and strong. If you're building a house, you want the second kind." You nod, watching how the flame moves differently now, less wild, more determined. "They say we didn't know chemistry," she adds with a grin, "but we knew how to listen to fire." She tosses something else into the pit, a powder the color of sand. It sizzles and turns green at the edges of the flame. The light flickers strangely on the nearby stone like it's been enchanted. What was that? Lime and ash? The old recipe. Makes stone soft for a moment, then stronger forever. You watch her pull out a flat brick, rough on one side, smooth on the other. She sets it next to a pile of others, all identical. "You're making concrete." She shrugs. "Not the kind you know. But yes, we used it to line the baths, the aqueducts, to patch the places where gods and water meet." You take a closer look at the bricks. Each is mixed with bits of crushed shell, volcanic stone, soot. Each is heavy, but somehow alive with layers. "Heat is a kind of knife," she says. "You cut things open with it. Separate what matters." You sit across from her now, the fire's warmth brushing your face. She's grinding something in a stone bowl, oily thick. She wipes her hands and shows you a small pot filled with dark brown paste. "What's that?" "For waterproofing. Used to coat the hulls of ships. Keeps them dry. Keeps the rot out." It smells faintly of pine and earth. She adds a pinch of powdered root, then stirs it with a carved stick. Found this recipe on a wall in the old quarter. No names, just marks. They left it there for whoever needed it. You glance around the ruins. Some of the stones still carry faded carvings, wavy lines, symbols for fire, for strength, for time. You trace one gently with your finger. They wrote their formulas in pictures. They wrote them in use, she says, not just in ink. And again, something clicks. The ancient world wasn't guessing. It was testing, remembering, sharing. You don't need a lab if you have a lifetime of observation and a wall to scratch your results into. She stands and walks toward a cistern at the edge of the ruin. She dips a bucket into it, then pours it slowly over a cracked slab. The water beads and runs just as it should. The sealant works. She grins, still learning from ghosts. The sky is changing now, mid-morning light pressing through the thin clouds, illuminating every groove in the stone with a pale gold. You look around and see more signs, fire-blackened tiles, stacked jars, shards of color fused to clay. You pick one up, a broken fragment of glass with a swirl of blue inside it. She takes it, holds it to the light, and nods. They melted sand with copper. Got this. Glass. Not just a luxury, but a revelation. Heat transformed something brittle into something permanent, and they knew it. She pulls a metal rod from the fire, now glowing red at one end. She strikes it against the stone tink, then dips it in water. The hiss makes you flinch. Hardened now, she says. Blade ready. You didn't even see it take shape, but it did. You run your hand across the surface of the stone bench you're sitting on. It's warm even now. You realize it's not just a place to sit. It was probably once part of a kiln or a furnace, maybe both. And you realize the boundary between chemistry and daily life didn't exist back then. Everything you touched had been transformed by fire, by time, by touch. The bricks, the jars, the walls, the floors, all evidence of people who studied without studying, who didn't separate the practical from the poetic. You stand now brushing ash from your hands. The woman nods. We didn't name the elements, but we knew which ones mattered. You look down at your own fingers, smudged black and gray. You feel warm, not just from the fire, but from the memory, because now you carry it too. The chemistry of living, the patience of testing, the reverence for what holds. And as you walk away from the fire pit, the last flickers of flame curve upward in a spiral greenish for a moment, then clear, then gone. You're surrounded by water, now still calm, glass-like, the kind of stillness that tricks your eyes. The sky above reflects perfectly onto the surface below, so it feels like you're floating in a mirror. There is no boat this time, no canyon, no wind. Just you, and a small, curved bowl gently bobbing in a shallow pool. A quiet voice speaks beside you. Watch. An old man sits cross-legged at the edge of the water. In his hands, a bronze coin and a folded scrap of bamboo. He places the coin into the bowl and lets it float. It tilts slightly, then rights itself. You blink. He smiles. This is a clock. Of a kind. You glance up at the clouds, white and slow and absent-minded. How can that be a clock? He gestures for patience. You sit beside him, knees to your chest. The pool is round and carved into a stone slab. Around the rim, faint notches, 12 of them, maybe more. When the moon pulls, he says, the bowl shifts. Not always, but enough. You don't move. You wait. A ripple almost invisible forms at the edge of the bowl. A small tilt. The coin slides slightly within the basin. not enough to fall, just enough to mark movement. There, he says. You look closer. One of the notches on the stone is wet now. The water inside the bowl must have spilled by a thread's width. That's a minute, he says. Maybe it isn't. Not by modern terms. But you don't argue, because this is time without numbers, a conversation between objects, between gravity and patience. He pulls another bowl toward him. This one is smaller. He fills it with water and pierces the bottom with a thin needle. A single drop begins to fall again and again into a dish below. Drip, drip, drip. You realize you're watching one of the earliest forms of measurement, the clepsydra, the water clock. He nods. The emperor's doctors used this, to time the pulse, to read the rhythm of the body. You close your eyes. Inhale. Your own heartbeat answers, not loudly, but steadily. You open your eyes again. He holds up a polished copper disc. Some used this too. To feel the moon's warmth, he lays it flat on the water's surface. It doesn't float. But it reflects. And as you watch, a faint shimmer of heat warps the mirrored image above. You didn't think it was possible. But the sunlight has a shape, and this water remembers it. He stands and walks to a wooden rack nearby, pulling down a long tube made of lacquered bamboo. He places it on the ground, peering through one end. You do the same. It's not a telescope. It's something simpler. It's alignment. You're looking straight at the tip of a mountain. As the clouds drift, a sliver of light peeks out and lands exactly at the edge of a carved groove in the stone near your feet. He nods. When the light touches there, it's time to begin the planting. You're not sure how many years this has taken to perfect. 10, 100. But the groove is smooth from generations of hands. You sit still, breathing in the warm air. It smells of moss and distant plum blossoms, and it hits you again like the slow realization of being loved. This was science without the need to hurry, measured in shadows, in drops, in breath. He hands you the bowl again. This time it holds no coin, just water. You can read the sky, he says, even when it's invisible. You stare down into it. The reflection trembles, slightly disturbed by your own exhale, then stills. The clouds swirl above. He speaks again, softly. When water is undisturbed, it tells the truth. And maybe it does. You watch a dragonfly skim the surface land on a nearby reed and flick its wings. The ripples stretch in perfect circles, reaching the rim of the stone pool. One touches your foot. Tick. Time has passed. Not a second, not a minute, but something. You close your eyes again. The sound of the dripping bowl continues steady and slow. Drip, drip, like the breathing of the world. And now you wonder, have we lost something, not the knowledge, but the listening? You lie back gently, letting your head rest against the warm stone. The pool beside you mirrors the sky once more, and your reflection lies halfway between heaven and earth. You could fall asleep like this with water as your clock and silence as your teacher. And perhaps that's how the ancients felt too. You're indoors now, but it doesn't feel enclosed. The walls are low and thick, built from clay and stone, but the windows are wide open to the air. There's no glass, just carved screens that let in a breeze scented with spice and warm dust. Light filters through them in sharp patterns, casting stars and hexagons across the floor. You're in a room filled with smell, not overpowering, just layered. Sweet cinnamon, sharp clove, soft sandalwood, faint smoke. And beneath it all, a scent you can't name but recognize instantly, the scent of old books. But there are no books here. Just trays of powder, small clay bowls, and a man in a dark robe drawing spirals on the table with a thin stick dipped in ground saffron. He looks up, smiling with tired eyes. Do you know why I use cinnamon for orbits? You hesitate. Because it smells good. He laughs, not unkindly. Because it leaves a trace, even when the math is gone. You sit beside him as he continues drawing the orbit of a planet you realize now. Not perfectly circular, off-center. An ellipse elongated like a teardrop. That he says tapping the point just off-center is where the sun hides. You watch the saffron fall grain by grain, forming the shape the ancients only guessed at. This is the golden age of Baghdad. Long before telescopes, someone was already mapping what they could not see. He brushes away the powder with a folded sheet of palm paper, then starts again, this time with nutmeg and ink sketching angles between stars. You don't have to see the whole sky, he murmurs. Just enough of it. Then the rest can be reasoned. There's no grand invention here. Just a table, a bowl, a patient hand. You glance around the room. More scrolls, more powders. Each shelf labeled with symbols, stars, moons, geometry etched into little wooden markers. You lift one scroll. It unfurls with a dry sigh, revealing columns of numbers written in perfect, even strokes. He tracked Mars for 22 years, the man says, not needing to look. Every night, same hour, same ritual. Sometimes the sky was cloudy. He noted that too. You gently set the scroll back down. It feels almost sacred. Not because of what it says, but because of the time it holds. Do you believe in patterns, he asks. You nod. Good, he says. Then you'll understand this. He pulls a flat copper disc from under the table. Thin, worn, etched with circles upon circles, interlocking gears, numbers along the rim. It clicks softly as he turns it. An astrolabe, he says. Not a machine. A memory. You hold it. It's heavier than it looks. The metal is warm from his hand. It tells you where you are and where you'll be, if you know how to ask it. You look through the tiny cutout, align a star, and adjust the wheel. The instrument doesn't light up. It doesn't buzz. But it responds. Slowly, subtly, like it's whispering the answer rather than shouting it. You set it down carefully. It feels alive. It is, he says, because it requires you to think with it, not just use it. You glance at a chart nearby. Moon phases drawn in dark charcoal, annotated with verses of poetry. Those are for the farmers, he says. They listen better when the moon is also singing. You smile. So you teach astronomy with poems, he nods, and sometimes soup recipes. You raise an eyebrow. Venus moves best when your belly's full, he shrugs. Another quiet joke. Another quiet truth. A student enters with a clay bowl, sets it down, and whispers something before vanishing again. The bowl is filled with dried dates and crushed almonds. Food for thought, literally. You eat one slowly. It's soft, fragrant, and earthy like everything in this room. He looks out the window now. The shadows from the screen shift slightly. The stars have begun to fade. Almost time for prayer, he murmurs. Not as an interruption, but as another kind of measurement. You realize something beautiful then. For these scholars, time was not separate from spirit. Astronomy was not separate from soul. The sky was both textbook and temple. He sets the saffron bowl aside, brushes the table clean, and places his hands flat on the wood. There is elegance, he says softly, in understanding only part of the picture. You nod. You feel it. You close your eyes for a moment, just listening to the hush, the smell of ink, the sound of pages shifting, the press of knowledge, gentle, persistent kind. No rush, no race, just questions, and the tools to ask them slowly. You open your eyes again and look around. The air is warmer now. The window stars have shifted across the floor. The sky outside is waking. The man rises, stretches, and gathers the astrolabe in both hands, cradling it like something fragile. You stand too, and together, you leave the room in silence. The stars are still there. You can't see them anymore, but you remember where they were. And that is enough. The sky is pale now, gentle pink leaking into soft orange, and you find yourself in shadow, not beneath a tree or a roof, but beneath stone, cool ancient stone. You're inside a tomb. The air is heavy, thick with the scent of dust, dried herbs, and something faintly metallic, like old coins or forgotten tools. There's a stillness here that feels respectful, not eerie. You're not intruding. You're being allowed to witness. A figure stands near a carved wall, tracing a hieroglyph with one finger. A woman. Her linen robe falls in soft folds, and her eyes are fixed on the image of a scale, balanced, delicate, exact. You know this one, she says. The heart and the feather. You nod. It's familiar. The heart of the dead weighed against a single white feather, the feather of Ma'at, goddess of truth and order. If the heart was heavier, she says it was because of lies, or cruelty, or burdens not released. And if it was lighter, then the soul could move on. She turns to you. It's a story, yes, but also, it's a measurement. You consider that. A moral equation. Not in numbers, in weight. She walks to a stone table. On it rests a balance scale, old but not ceremonial. Used, worn smooth at the edges. She lifts a small pouch and pours out seeds onto one side. Then from another bowl, a polished white pebble onto the other. The scale tilts. Too heavy, she murmurs. She removes a few seeds, waits, and nods. Now. She turns to you. We learn to calibrate our tools by calibrating our lives. You sit down, resting your hands in your lap. The room is dim, lit only by a small shaft of light filtering through a slit in the wall. It lands directly on a series of carved notches, marks of measurement centuries old. They're not aligned like rulers. They're spaced like time. When the sun strikes here, she says, pointing to the second notch, we know the season has changed, and the Nile will begin to think about rising. Not rise, not flood. Just think about it. You like that. You watch as she lifts another pouch. Inside are stones, each a different size, each with a mark. These were used for trade, she says. But more importantly, they were used to settle arguments. You raise an eyebrow. If two farmers disagreed about how much grain was owed, she explains they brought their own stones, and the priest would weigh both side by side. She smiles. The stones didn't lie, and no one wanted to be the one with the heavier one. Again, you see its science not as invention, but as fairness, as trust. She gestures toward a low shelf. On it, a row of vessels, different shapes and colors, each with a spout, a stopper, a measurement scratched into its side. For oil, for wine, for water, even for breath. Breath. She lifts the smallest vessel and tips it toward you. They say this one held a sigh, a final one, measured and saved. You don't know whether that's poetic or literal, but it doesn't matter, because both feel true. You follow her into the next chamber. The ceiling here is painted with constellations, still vivid, still perfect after all these years. Stars and shapes, lines between them. Myth mapped onto the heavens. She touches one star with reverence. This one never moves, so we measured everything from it. You remember Polaris, the North Star. But this isn't about the star itself. It's about stillness as anchor. How did they find it, you ask? They watched, she says, for years, maybe lifetimes. A soft breeze stirs the edge of her robe. The tomb breathes with you. You walk slowly past tall columns, each etched with more scales, more weights, more symbols of balance. And then unexpectedly, you find a doorway with no inscription. Just one smooth slab of polished stone, nothing carved, nothing written. What's this? She looks at it for a long moment, then shrugs. No one knows. It's always been left blank. A mystery, perhaps. Or maybe a measurement still waiting to be made. You sit beside it. Rest your head against the cool surface. Your breath slows. The silence deepens. Time thickens into something you can almost touch. And you think of the heart again. Of all the things that could be measured, and still the weight of a soul mattered most. You feel it now in your own chest. The way your body settles. The way your breath lifts and falls. The gentle pull of gravity on your thoughts. It's not morbid. It's peaceful. To imagine that even in death there was a system, a weighing, a ritual, a science of goodbyes. And somehow that comforts you. Because it means they weren't afraid. They were prepared, not by numbers, but by balance. The light changes again. This time it's not sun or firelight, but a shimmer of bronze. You're looking into a mirror round polished, framed in copper. But not your own mirror. It's old, ancient. The kind you'd find on a carved table beside oils and combs. A vanity maybe, but also a tool. A soft hand lifts the mirror gently and tilts it toward the open air. You see your reflection faint and wavy. Then it fades. The woman holding it smiles. You see how it clouds, she says. Watch. She breathes on the surface. A small fog blooms, then vanishes. She lifts it toward the breeze from a nearby window. The fog clears faster. She nods. It will rain soon. You blink. How can you tell from that? She grins. Because yesterday it stayed for longer. Today it lifts more quickly. The air is drier, cooler. The mirror listens. It hits you gently. This mirror isn't for vanity. It's an early weather tool, not for measurement by number, but by comparison, by memory, by noticing. She wipes the surface with a silk cloth and places it flat on a slab of stone. The sun beams in at a sharp angle. You notice how the light reflects against the far wall, concentrated warm. If the spot lands higher, she explains, the day will be dry. If it falls low, we prepare the cloths. You glance at the wall. A series of marks run vertically like a calendar with no numbers. Just notches, each one worn from years of tracking. You ask, do you measure time with light? She shrugs. We measure light with time. You're not sure if it's the same thing, but it sounds lovely. Nearby, another woman is arranging small cups filled with colored water, green, blue, amber. She places them in a row beside a window, each aligned perfectly. You watch puzzled as she dips a tiny strip of linen into each. It's the color, she explains softly. When the sun passes through, it tells us how strong it is, a prism of prediction. You lean forward and see it more clearly, a spectrum, not drawn with ink, but cast in real time across the wall. Each colored cup becomes a signal, a subtle dial of sunlight. In the corner, a child is building something, a simple dome of stones, hollow in the middle, with a single hole at the top. You watch as they place a small mirror at the bottom and adjust it with a twig. Is that a game, you ask? They shake their head. It catches the sky. You tilt your head. Why? To see how long it takes the light to move. You smile. It's a solar chamber, a crude one but real, a place to track how the sun slides not just across the day, but across seasons, shadows shifting through stone and glass. You sit in the room's center now, surrounded by light, by reflections, by warmth. You remember the sound of water dripping in the clepsydra, the smell of fire-softened stone. The child's mirror catches a beam of light and redirects it onto your lap. It dances gently as the wind pushes the reflection. You hold your breath for a moment. Even this, the way light bends, shimmers, moves through air, was once a kind of divine communication. You glance up. The ceiling is painted with a sun in motion, its rays trailing like vines. Within each ray, a symbol grain, water, a bird, a flower. The elements of life tied to the motion of light. A man enters the room holding a metal dish filled with oil. He sets it beside the mirror and lights it. The flame dances low but steady. He places a small bead of wax on the rim. As it melts, it begins to slide. You see, he says, the sun tells the oil when to soften. The oil tells the wax when to move. And the wax tells us when it's time to rest. A chain of cause and effect. So quiet, so humble, but true. Light in this world is not just illumination, it's instruction. You think of all the ways we measure now: laser optics, satellite sensors, radio spectrometry, and yet here in this room of copper and silk and oil and water, the same questions were being answered, not with digits, but with rhythm. The woman picks up the mirror again. The sun catches it, and for a moment, a small dot of light lands on your chest. Warm, precise tone. She smiles. You see now, you nod. You do. The sky isn't just up. It's in everything. In the way a beam bends through glass. In how dew dries. In the way your own shadow shifts slightly across the floor while you sit still. You lie back slowly, letting the sun graze your cheek. And you think if this mirror could talk, it wouldn't just show you your face, it would show you time. Weather, breath, mood, maybe even truth. Because in the ancient world, reflection wasn't vanity, it was insight. You close your eyes. The room is glowing, and you are too. You're in motion now. Not fast, not the kind of motion that blurs. This is slow, smooth spinning. You're watching a boy with a toy. A top. He flicks it between his fingers, and it spins across a flat stone surface with surprising grace. It hums softly, a low whir that seems to settle into the space between sound and thought. You follow its motion as it tilts, adjusts, corrects itself. For a moment it seems like it will never fall, and then wobble, pause, collapse. The boy picks it up, windmills his hand, and sends it off again. You sit beside him. Why does it spin like that, you ask? He shrugs. Because I asked it to. You both laugh. But you're thinking. This is angular momentum. This is inertia. This is physics, with fingerprints. An older man, maybe his teacher, walks over, holding a wooden disc with small stones placed around its edge. He sets it on the same flat stone surface and spins it too. It doesn't move as elegantly, it lurches, stutters, but holds. That's the weight lesson, he says. We move easier when we're balanced. He adds another stone to one side. Now it wobbles wildly, spinning off-center. You nod slowly. You feel the lesson. In the background, a young girl is playing with a pendulum made from a carved rock and a string. She swings it gently, lets it go, and watches it trace an invisible path back and forth in the air. Her eyes don't leave the arc. She isn't bored. She's watching something real. She pulls out a stick and begins scratching marks in the dust each time the pendulum returns to her hand. You crouch beside her. What are you counting? Heartbeats, she says. You feel yours thump softly in your chest. And yes, it matches the swing. Almost perfectly. She adds a new mark to the pattern. It's not always the same, she says. If I hold my breath, it changes. If I laugh, it changes. You look at her and realize she's found the link between time and the body. She swings the pendulum again, this time higher. It takes longer to return. She tilts her head. Maybe the air gets heavier up there, she says. Maybe. Or maybe she's just discovering acceleration without needing the word. You walk toward a shaded area where two boys are building a wheel. Not a cart, not a machine, just a wooden circle lashed with vine. They roll it back and forth between them. It keeps going better if we lean, one says. Why, you ask? They shrug. The earth pulls different when we tilt. You smile. That's not technically accurate. But it's not exactly wrong either. You push the wheel once just to feel it. It responds with a satisfying tug and rolls across the packed dirt. And you understand now they're not playing. They're testing. Every top, every pendulum, every rolling wheel is an experiment. Not for school, not for grades, for curiosity. You sit beneath a tree watching the pendulum girl join the spinning top boy. They swap toys. She spins the top. He counts the pendulum. They whisper ideas to each other in the soft logic of shared wonder. Behind you, the teacher draws a circle in the dirt with his heel. Everything returns to this, he says, even if it doesn't know it yet. You think of orbits, of cycles, of rotation and return. You draw a smaller circle inside his with your finger. Why do things spin, you ask? He kneels beside you, looks at the line. Because they want to stay where they were. But the world keeps turning beneath them. You smile. That's a lovely thought. You remember someone once calling angular momentum a refusal to forget direction. And you feel that now. The top, the wheel, the orbit, all of it wants to keep going. Until something else whispers no. The sun begins to lower, casting long shadows across the stone and dust. The spinning top slows again. The pendulum's arc fades. The wheel falls gently on its side. But no one looks disappointed. The girl lies on her back in the dirt, watching the clouds drift. The boy starts building a ramp from sticks and clay. And the teacher, still crouched near the circle, looks up and says, "The universe isn't still. Why should we be?" You lie beside them now. You watch the sky shift from gold to pink to soft gray blue. A single star appears small but firm. And just like that, you feel the earth moving again, not fast, not jarring, just turning quietly beneath your resting body. A top, a wheel, a planet. All turning, all obeying rules they never had to be told. You breathe in, and the world spins gently with you. You hear the forest before you see it. A soft rustling like pages being turned very slowly. Then a breeze touches your skin, and with it comes the smell of damp earth, crushed leaves, and something faintly floral, a scent you can't quite name, but feels familiar, like a song you only remember in fragments. You're walking now barefoot, along a path cushioned by moss and fallen petals. The canopy above filters the light into soft green shadows. The air is thick with quiet life. A woman waits for you at the bend. She kneels beside a flowering plant, her hands gently adjusting the angle of a broad leaf. She glances up at you and smiles. "You came at the right time," she says. "They're just about to open." You kneel beside her, unsure what she means, until the plant begins to move. Slowly, softly, its pale lavender petals unfold, stretching wide as if waking from a long nap. "It always opens when the sun touches this root," she says, pointing to a spot where a sliver of sunlight finally breaks through the leaves above. "It's like a bell, a silent one." You ask, how does it know, when she tilts her head, amused. "The same way you do. It just feels the light." You sit with her, watching more flowers open. Some nearby remain closed, their leaves curled tightly. She doesn't touch them. That one won't bloom until the heat rises. You realize you're not in a garden. You're in a living clock. Each plant marks time differently, some by temperature, some by light, some by moisture in the air. She walks to another patch and touches a leaf that curls at her touch, withdrawing into itself. "This one is shy," she says, "but it's a good listener. It tells us when the air is too dry." A young boy appears with a basket of colored stones. He places one next to each blooming plant, marking time not in hours or minutes, but in rhythm. He looks up. When all the yellow ones are blooming, it means the bees are coming. You watch as he arranges the stones into a soft spiral around a patch of white flowers. "This helps me remember," he says. And you realize before calendars there were petals. Before clocks there were blooming cues. The woman leads you deeper into the grove. You pass plants that open only when touched by moonlight. Others that release scent only at dusk. Some close completely when rain is coming, folding themselves like tiny umbrellas. She stops before a tall stalk covered in tightly coiled buds. "This one," she says, "only blooms once a year, but always on the same night. Always when the crickets begin to sing in a certain way." You're skeptical until you hear it. A long, steady chirp higher than most, then another matching it, and you look up. One of the buds trembles, unfurls, just like that. You look around the forest now and understand that it is not wild at all, at least not in the way you thought. It is organized not by design but by memory, by sequence. She crouches beside a vine coiled tightly along a low branch. "This one tells us when to harvest the roots. If it's blooming early, we wait. If it's late, we dig sooner." You don't ask how she knows. It's in her fingertips, her breath, her bones. She kneels in the soil as though she's listening to it. Because she is. You walk a bit further and come upon a clearing. Dozens of flowers face the same direction. Not north, not south, but toward a certain spot in the sky. "That's where the moon will rise tonight," she whispers. "They're waiting." You sit among them, cross-legged still. And suddenly the forest is quiet. Not because nothing is happening, but because everything is waiting. Time here is not made of seconds. It's made of triggers. Heat, light, scent, buzzing wings, falling dew. Each signal becomes the next. Each bloom calls the bees. Each scent calls the wind. Each change invites another. You lie back gently, letting the moss hold your head. The forest leans in, not threatening, but curious. The woman sits nearby humming a low tune. Not a song with words, just a note that wavers like sunlight through trees. She plucks a leaf, places it on your palm. This one closes at your warmth. You feel it. The gentle curl, the soft pull inward. It isn't scared. It's just responding, like everything else. And suddenly you feel like part of the sequence, too. You remember the flowers that open with light, the vines that bloom to cricket song, the roots that wait for rain, the spiral of memory made with colored stones. This is a garden, yes, but it is also a clock, a calendar, a library, a weather map, a soul. You close your eyes, and even in sleep you feel things blooming around you. The scent of wood smoke greets you before your eyes even open. You feel warmth near your feet, gentle crackling. Not a fire for cooking or danger, just a signal, a conversation. The kind of fire people gather around to think. You're in the highlands now, somewhere windy, rocky, vast. The sky is huge here. You can see forever. And rising into that endless air are curls of smoke, thin, controlled, deliberate. You sit up. A man in thick robes tends a small pile of kindling, stacking and spacing it carefully. Not randomly. There's a pattern. He lights it. Smoke rises again, but not in a straight column. It twirls slightly, curls once, twice, then vanishes into the wind. He nods. That means they heard us, he says. You tilt your head. He points to the mountain across the valley. A similar smoke curl lifts there, mimicking his own. They answer. You're watching the oldest wireless communication in the world. No wires, no screens, just flame breath and sky. You notice a pile of wrapped leaves nearby. He opens one. Inside are symbols painted in ash and ochre. Simple lines, curved marks, a kind of code. We don't write words, he says. We write instructions, warnings, news. You look closer. 3 straight lines. A circle, then a jagged curve. Storm, he explains. Coming fast, with wind. They'll see the signal in 2 valleys by sunset. He wraps the leaf again, places it beside the fire. You ask, what happens if it's cloudy? He shrugs. Then we use mirrors. He pulls out a polished slab of obsidian. The sun flashes on its surface, throwing a beam of light into the distance. It dances across a hillside, striking a shiny stone far away. A few seconds later, the flash returns. You smile. He grins back. Smoke for when the air listens, light for when it's stubborn. You walk with him to a tall wooden frame, crossbeams lashed with fiber rope. Hanging from it are pieces of dried hide arranged in layers. He moves one and the wind shifts the others. This tells us where the gusts come from, he explains, and how they talk to the mountains. You watch as the hides lift, tilt, flutter. A soft song made of air and movement. The wind isn't random here. It's information. A child runs up holding a clay whistle. She blows into it, and it gives off a low hum. Then she turns faces the other way and blows again. Higher now. You look at the man. He nods. Sound changes with the breeze. That's how we know if the canyon is clear. You're stunned. There are no satellites here, no microphones. But somehow everything is being sensed, recorded, responded to. Not on paper, in memory. Breath, movement. You sit again by the fire. Another signal rises, short burst, pause, long curl. He nods again. They understood. They'll start moving the goats tonight. You realize the system is vast. A network made not of cables but trust. People watching the sky, reading smoke, mirrors, whistles, wind. You take a deep breath. The air smells like pine stone ash and freedom. This used to be everywhere, he says softly. Now we're the last ones. You don't reply. You just watch the smoke drift upward, silent, beautiful, full of meaning. He hands you a strip of bark, a piece of charcoal, and gestures for you to try. You draw a wavy line, then a circle, then a short mark, your own small sentence in the language of wind and fire. He studies it, smiles. You just said all is calm, but watch the east. Not bad for a first message. You watch the next fire start in the distance. It responds with your pattern. You've joined the network now. You lean back, eyes on the sky. The wind hums past your ears. You hear something high above, a hawk slicing through the current. The hides on the frame shift. The child blows her whistle again. And in the soft chaos of wind and smoke, you find something deeper. Data doesn't need devices. It just needs meaning. And someone who knows how to listen. The wind continues. And so does the message. The smell of metal is sharp now, almost sweet. You're in a room filled with shadow stone and something alchemical. The air glows dimly orange from a single flame beneath a rounded crucible. The room is quiet, but not silent. You hear dripping, bubbling, the occasional clink of metal against stone. A man in a heavy cloak is stirring something with a glass rod. The liquid inside the crucible shifts in color, deep red to dark green to a strange, shimmering silver. He doesn't look up, just says, "Careful." It's not what it seems. You step closer. On the table beside him are rows of vials, powders, and cloth sachets, tiny pieces of parchment inked with faded symbols. He moves one aside, revealing a ring of symbols etched directly into the stone. A circle, triangles, arrows, suns. You ask, "Is this chemistry?" He pauses, then chuckles. "No," he says. "This is curiosity." He pours the liquid into a small mold shaped like a beetle. It hisses, smokes, cools. You watch it harden. He lifts it from the mold. It's not jewelry. It's not decoration. It's a seal, a message encoded in metal. Each one is different, he says, not for beauty, for intention. You watch as he picks up another item from the table, a feather wrapped in copper wire. "What's this for?" He grins. "I have no idea. Yet." There's no shame in the mystery. In fact, the room feels like a shrine to not knowing. Not ignorance, but patience. The kind that lets questions breathe. You glance around. Shelves line the walls, wooden cracked, bowed under the weight of vessels and jars. Some are labeled with Latin, some with symbols you don't recognize. A few are unmarked entirely. A child enters with a bucket of water. She pours it slowly into a basin with floating leaves. One turns black instantly. "Not yet," she says. She's testing for purity, for transformation. You crouch beside her. She lifts a petal, dips it into the basin, and watches it curl. "It's trying," she says. "But it's scared." You're not sure what that means exactly, but somehow you understand. The alchemist, if that's what he is, returns to the flame. He drops a small cube of crystal into the crucible. It doesn't melt. It just disappears. He looks pleased. You ask, "Are you trying to make gold?" He waves that off. "No, I'm trying to make sense." He opens a book, thick, soft-covered, stitched by hand. Inside each page contains more than recipes. There are drawings, reflections, Mistakes crossed out gently with notes beside them: too fast, too much breath, try again in autumn. And there it is again, science that listens to time, season, temperature, emotion. You read a line aloud: the mixture burned today. Possibly because I felt angry. He nods. The flame knows more than we admit. You laugh. But part of you believes him. The girl brings over a sealed jar. It glows faintly inside, a pale green like spring fog. She opens the lid carefully. A wisp of vapor escapes and twirls upward, then disappears. He watches it like it's alive. That was joy, trapped at last equinox. You raise an eyebrow. He winks. Maybe he's joking. Maybe he's not. He sets down the jar and points to a chart on the wall. It's a wheel, divided into seasons, moons, tides, moods. Everything transforms, he says, but not always when you expect. You think back to the pendulum, the flowering garden, the smoke signals, the bowl of water. Everything in its own time. The girl holds up 2 powders, one red, one yellow. She mixes them in her palm. They turn green. You don't understand how, but you feel something stir in your chest. A kind of permission to not understand and still be fascinated. The man lifts a thin blade from a bucket of brine. It's etched now, marked with symbols that weren't there before. Salt writes, he says, if you give it time. He lays the blade on a stone and begins tracing its new patterns with ink. You whisper, is this alchemy? He finally looks at you, really looks, then nods. Yes, but not for gold, for change. He wipes his hands and offers you a flask, inside a slow swirl of pale blue. Drink it, he says, if you want to feel brave. Or don't. If you already do, you don't drink it, but you hold it close. The warmth surprises you. It's not hot. It's alive. He returns to the flame. The girl hums softly. A leaf curls, a drop hisses, and you realize this isn't about turning metal into treasure. It's about turning questions into paths. You lie down near the shelves, staring at the ceiling. It's covered in soot and stars. Someone painted constellations there in silver dust. You watch one shimmer faintly in the firelight. And you wonder, maybe that's what alchemy really is. A refusal to separate science from soul. A quiet rebellion against the idea that wonder needs to be explained. Sand again. Not the dry kind that scratches your skin or swirls in your teeth. This sand is soft, fine as flower, cool beneath your bare feet. It hums with the memory of wind. You're in a desert now, but not the kind that forgets. This one remembers in circles. Children laugh in the distance. You follow the sound. Over a small dune you find them. A group of children squatting in the sand, drawing spirals with sticks. Not random spirals, not aimless. Each curve precise like a snail shell stretched by memory. They don't speak much, they just draw. A tall boy looks up and points to his spiral. This one is the wind we had yesterday, he says. You frown slightly. Wind has a shape, he nods. Every morning I draw it before the tracks disappear. You glance around. Indeed, in the distance, faint lines sweep through the sand, the signatures of wind remembered by the earth. You kneel beside him. His spiral tightens at the end, then flares suddenly. That's when it turned, he says. We had to bring in the goats. Another child, maybe 6 or 7, drags a small rock, tied to a string, in a looping path through the sand. She's making the path of time, he says, the way the sun walks when you're not looking. You're not sure if that's metaphor or map. You don't ask. You just watch. An elder sits nearby, legs crossed, a long staff beside her. Her robe is dyed with ochre and faded blues. She draws with a fingertip, slow and steady. Her spiral moves inward. This one, she says softly, is how you think when you're tired. You pause. Then she smiles. And this one, she continues spiraling outward now, is how you dream when you feel safe. A third spiral interrupted, jagged, almost broken. And this, she adds, is how a year with no rain feels. You sit quietly in the sand, drawing your own spiral. It doesn't come out perfect. It leans. The elder nods approvingly. Good, she says. A spiral that leans knows what gravity is. The children giggle. They're not mocking. They're agreeing. The elder lifts her staff and begins tracing wider arcs, great loops across the sand, connecting each child's spiral like constellations on the ground. This is how we remember, she says, even when no one writes it down. You glance around. No paper, no ink, no books. But every line is a sentence, every swirl a paragraph. You ask if the wind erases them all. She nods. That's part of the story, too. You lie back in the sand. The sun above is low, soft, wrapping everything in a golden haze. You feel the heat, not on your skin, but in the air just above it, a shimmer. The earth breathing light. Beside you, a girl draws a spiral with 2 centers. What's that one, you whisper? It's when someone you love is far away, she says. You close your eyes for a moment. That makes sense. In the distance, someone pours a small trail of salt into a spiral on a flat stone. Another lines the same path with black pebbles. At sunset, those stones will cast shadows that mark direction, north-south return. You realize that even here, where ink would dry before it touched the page, people found ways to record without permanence. They trusted memory. They trusted rhythm. They trusted the shape of thought itself. The elder taps her staff against the sand 3 times. Come, she says. It's time. Everyone stands. The spirals are left behind. The wind will take them soon. You walk together toward a flat ridge where someone has built a small cairn, stones stacked in a tall column, one for each season past. 4 winds, the elder says. 4 stones. But the 5th, that one's for tomorrow. She places a small round stone on top. Everyone watches in silence. A ritual. A record. A hope. You look out over the dunes. The sun is sinking and the wind begins to rise. It rushes low across the sand, blurring the lines, softening the spirals, but not erasing them. You carry them with you now. In your hands, in your breath, in your thoughts. And you understand not all knowledge is built to last. Some is built to return, like wind, like stories, like spirals. The night settles like a soft blanket, thicker now, cooler, inviting. You lie back beneath a canopy of stars, but these aren't just any stars. They are the same constellations you met long ago, those ancient patterns whose shapes were drawn not just in the sky, but in stories, songs, and silences. You feel the earth beneath you, solid yet yielding. The breath of the world moves slowly now, like a tide pulling you towards sleep. You remember all you've seen, the shadow play by firelight, the stones weighed with fairness, the smoke signals that floated over mountain valleys, the spinning tops and swinging pendulums that taught the language of motion. The blooming flowers marking time, the concrete softened by fire, the water clocks dripping slowly. The mirror that told of the weather, the spirals drawn in sand that held memory itself. all of it woven together in one vast, slow-moving dance. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. The air fills your lungs with ancient whispers. The pulse of the earth hums beneath your skin. The sky's patterns ripple behind your closed eyelids. Maybe this universe is just an unsaved test version. Or that's your brain's way of playing tricks. Who knows, right? But what you do know is this. The ancients didn't just observe the world, they lived inside it. They felt its rhythms, its mysteries, its stories. Science wasn't a list of facts. It was a song sung softly beneath the stars. And now as you drift deeper into sleep, you carry that song with you. Remember the shadows, the smoke, the spinning tops, and the blooming flowers. They are not lost. They are part of you. Your breath slows, your heart steadies. The universe is vast, and so is your place in it. Sleep well. You are safe here.